So as a school, all of the classes that you will be in generally will require APA format. I realize this is new for some of you, especially those of you who are more familiar with MLA format. But since we're a small school, we use the same format for all of our classes. And I found that a lot of universities and colleges, they're actually becoming more flexible as far as which one. So as long as you are consistent with what you use. And so that's why we've chosen to use the APA format, so that you don't have to switch formats. You know, I'm doing English class, so I have to do MLA. Okay, I'm in an education class, I have to do APA. So we have the same for all your classes to make that hopefully a little bit easier for you and for us too. So when we're speaking about APA 7, these are some general requirements. And again, this applies to anything longer than 300 words or a page. I realize that sometimes you might be asked to write some reflections or some journal entries that may not be subject to this, but if it's any type of a report or essay, you should be looking at this as a guide. So it should have a cover page. It should also have a reference page. That is, if you are referencing or referring to any other information other than your own knowledge and experience, you need to be giving credit to the source that you took it from, even if it's from the Bible or Spirit of Prophecy or any other source that you are using. Okay? The text should be Times New Roman 12 or Calibri Arial 11, and it should be double-spaced. That is a common thing. It is, for one, it's generally easier for the teachers to grade if it's double-spaced, because that gives more room for comments. So the pages are double-spaced, 1-inch margins. This is generally a preset in your Word document, so generally you don't have to worry too much about your margins. A paragraph generally consists of 5 to 7 sentences and should be indented the first line. It should have correctly formatted headings, and it either meets or exceeds the minimum length requirement. So if the essay is 3 pages, those 3 pages need to be full. Now, if you have 3.5 pages, the extra page doesn't have to be full, but for a page to count towards the minimum requirement, it needs to be a full page. Okay? So just because you have enough on the page to have a second page doesn't necessarily mean that you have met that page requirement. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so conventions. In school, we are learning to speak and write and communicate in a more informed environment. When we are just speaking with our friends, we often just communicate in whatever way we feel like it or in whatever way we're comfortable. But in an academic setting, it is almost like there is another type of language. Not that it's a completely different language, but it has some different rules that govern it so that people can understand each other. Some of that is particular vocabulary. So let's say that you are really good in computers or something, and you are trying to explain it to someone who does not understand. You are going to have to do a lot of explaining of words that they don't understand. But when you are in a community with someone else who has the same level as you, you use that vocabulary as a means of efficiency. So instead of explaining this area in many words, I'm just using one word to explain it. So that is why generally that teachers will expect you to use vocabulary. Let's say you're in a science class or a math class. If you're required to write, you're generally expected to use whatever vocabulary your textbook uses. And that also means that you're generally trying to avoid slang words, abbreviations, or contractions, which again are acceptable when speaking with one another, but are generally not considered formal communication as far as writing. Capitalizing God, the Bible, and all proper nouns, and of course, correct spelling, punctuation, and grammar. I want to take a little bit more time talking about plagiarism. Not that I feel or expect it to be a serious problem, but that it is frequently misunderstood. So, in short, Plagiarism is when you use information from another source without properly crediting it. Now, I'm not suggesting that anyone would intentionally go and just copy something from the internet or from a book or whatever and just slap it and present it as their own. I'm not saying that. But often, what happens is because students don't understand exactly what plagiarism is, sometimes they can go a little bit into that territory without realizing it, because they don't know all of the definitions of plagiarism. And unfortunately, whether you know the definition or not, the consequence is still the same. So because of that, I want to give you a little bit more information as to exactly what are some examples of plagiarism and what you can do to avoid them. So the most obvious one is, as I said earlier, the copy and paste, which is what we usually think of. So there are other examples, like copied material where you do use the quotation marks, but where you don't reference the source. It's easy to do this in Bible verses because, we know when we just put it in there, we don't take time to look up the verse and cite it correctly. So using quotation marks isn't enough. You actually need to include the source. The next kind is patchwork plagiarism, and some of these you have examples of in the handout behind the writing expectations page, so you can see a little bit of what that can look like in a student's work. So patchwork plagiarism, let's say you find a quote, but you realize, oh no, I can't use this large of a quote, so you take it and just change a few words, reword some of them, and it's like, well, I don't need to put quotations because it's not an exact quote anymore. But that's called either patchwork or mosaic plagiarism, because you just add a few of your words to it, but the main quote or the information still resembles the original source so closely that it is definitely not your own words. Another form is presenting another person's paper as your own, regardless of how it was obtained. Now, I don't think anybody would go and steal another person's paper, but sometimes you find things online, you find something that was written for a similar class, and it's like, oh wow, I could use those ideas in my own paper. Be careful of that. Even if it was given to you, even if you didn't steal it as such. Even if someone, let you read a paper they wrote for another class, and you decide those ideas are really good, so you decide to use them yourself, that can count as plagiarism too. When parts of the paper were written by someone else, without acknowledgement or permission from the instructor. Generally written work is expected to be your own unless it's specifically designated as a group project. Also presenting for credit without instructor's permission written work that was previously submitted for another class. Now some classes overlap and you think, well, I presented this paper for philosophy of Advanced education. It's pretty similar to what this other class is requiring, so it might be tempting to say, to submit the paper again. There may be some cases in which you can do that, but you certainly need to get approval from your instructor and tell them, look, this is something I had done for another class. Is this acceptable, or do you want me to do it? I saw a hand.
I was just wondering, so that's applicable even if you did write your own paper?
Yes. Yes. If you have previously submitted it for credit for another class, you need to request permission before submitting it again. That is something I found out quite recently. It's something I didn't even know myself, so I'm learning too. Manny?
What if you use like a paragraph from one of your old assignments?
That could be a little bit different just because, again, it hasn't been published or submitted for credit. If it was submitted for the same class, I realized that some papers, you're doing drafts and stuff, so one assignment is expected to be a revision of another, in which case that might be expected, but I would still try to not just copy and paste into work, even if it is, acceptable in that sense, simply because every writing assignment should have a specific flow to it, and I explained this to one of my classes last semester, that often we tend to copy and to use large quotes because one, they fill up the paper faster, and two, if it's from another source, we tend to think that that source speaks better than we can, and therefore is a more eloquent source, so we want to use that to make our point. But what happens if you use a lot of quotes is it's kind of like a bumpy road. It's your style, and then it switches to the style of the other writer, and it can make it hard to follow your paper because the transitions can be a little bit rough. And as far as filling up your paper faster, actually, if you introduce the quote and summarize the quote and explain the implications of the quote, you might be surprised that that can often end up filling up your paper more quickly than just putting quotes in your paper. All right. So all papers submitted, and this may vary a little bit based on the class, and so you can ask your teacher how they want you to do it. But what we do as far as plagiarism is some universities use Turnitin, etc. We use Grammarly, and this is an external report, so that way it's not up to us to try to figure out. It's an external source, an unbiased source, if you will, that tells us if there's anything in the paper that was used without references. Now, some of you know this too, that you can get reports from Grammarly for free, some of them. And I encourage that also. What you can do is you can, I think the free version, you just copy and paste the text from your essay, and it will give you a lot of feedback. It will tell you things about sentence structure, it will tell you about spelling, it'll tell you grammatical things that you can change. So, feel free to use that source to help you. However, when it comes to the purposes of plagiarism, the premium report is better in that way. So how can you get one of those? Email your draft or your paper to the email address listed on there, and we will send you a Grammarly report. Again, most teachers will probably require this before they give you a grade, and it just gives them an unbiased way to evaluate your work. Briefly about quotations, and then we're going to take a few questions before we close. So all quotations should be enclosed in quotation marks. Direct quotes should not exceed 20% of the paper. So even if you are citing something correctly, there is still a limit as to how much direct quotes you can use in the paper and it still be considered your own paper. Makes sense, right? Direct quotes any longer than 40 words should be formatted as block quotes. I'm not going to explain that right now, but I'm going to give you some sources after. And anytime that you do use a direct source from any source other than your own, you should include the author, the publishing date, the book, the paragraph number, etc. Okay, and lastly, be sure to look at the bottom because we understand that we're all here learning together. Some of your teachers, APA is still new for them, so we're all learning together. However, if there is a glaring omission, your teacher may ask you to fix it before they will accept your paper. Like for example, if there is no cover page, if your paper doesn't meet the minimum length requirement, or if it has a higher plagiarism score, which means you need to work more on your sources, your teacher may say, look, you need to work on this a little more before I will accept it. Okay? And briefly, I want to talk about how we are planning to help you, because again, we're all learning this, and I know it can be a lot all at once to try to apply everything. So, your teachers, one, we provided you with this, so you can always refer to it. Secondly, ask your instructors for help if you're not sure about something. Your syllabi will also give you extra information regarding the requirements for your specific assignment. And I didn't bring it with me, but there's also an APA handbook. There are a few copies of it in the library. If you're a composition student, it's required, and if you don't have it yet, you'll get it soon. And also, I know many students have told me that they actually prefer to find it online. How do I format a cover page in APA format? You can do that. Just be sure that the source you are getting it from is a credible source, like Purdue OWL or a university website, and not just somebody's blog, because often there's misunderstandings of certain things. So it's fine to find the answers online, just make sure that you're finding them from a credible source. And lastly, we have the Writing Center, which I know some of you have already been there. And what is our purpose there? Often, when we realize we need help with our papers, it's easy to, submit the paper and expect whoever's in the Writing Center to fix it for us. But how we work in the Writing Center is our goal is not only to have good papers, but to have good writers. So it's because of that we work together with you. We may give you your ideas, but the paper is still your own. And for that reason, you can't just submit a paper and say, hey, grade this for me, or fix it for me, or tell me what I need to do. We prefer to work one-on-one with you so that not only your paper can be better, but you can develop the skills you need to make your future papers better. And some students realize when they come, it's like, wait, I could have found that myself. So really, that is our goal, to help you develop those skills so that you don't need us anymore. But in the meantime, we're very happy to help you. And you may ask, well, who's the Writing Center for? Everyone. When I was studying a year ago, I hardly submitted a paper without using the school's Writing Center. And I generally consider myself to be a pretty good writer. But even the best of writers can benefit from a second pair of eyes, a second mind, some ideas, and it helped me a lot. So just because you think you're a good writer, still come and take advantage of it. You may be surprised to learn some skills that may make you even more effective and make your writing more efficient. Okay, these are our hours. These will be posted later. So if you don't get to write this down, you'll find it later. So we're kind of doing, at this point, a combination of online through Zoom and in person. In person, you can come Monday, Wednesday. This shouldn't be Thursday, this is Friday, from 1 o'clock to 2:30 p.m. And on Sunday afternoons, at this point, we're doing it through Zoom, but if that changes, we'll let you know. How to come? You can sign up. We'll have the link posted outside. We're doing it through Calendly, which is an excellent way for you to sign up so that we don't double book. So you can sign up for a 30-minute slot, send your draft to our English department email, and you may ask why. Why can't I just come with my paper? Well, it saves you time and it saves me time. Because if you bring my paper, I have to read through your whole paper and become familiar with it. I'm willing to do that. However, if you send me your paper, I can read through it in advance, and we can probably save half of the time that I spend working with you so that you have more time to devote to your other assignments. So if you can send it, whatever, is it a draft or a paper, send it to me before you come so that I can have a chance to look at it and so that I can be as prepared as possible to give you feedback and help. And when you come on time. Make sure to bring your syllabus and assignment requirements. So I might not, of course I have the sheet that I passed out to you all, but I don't know the specific requirements of every teacher. So be sure to bring their requirements, because I don't want to tell you something or contradict something your teacher has specified for that assignment. So bring a copy of your requirements so that I can help you meet those. Okay, we have about 2 minutes left. I wanted to ask if there are any questions. Nope. All clear? All good? Again, we are here to help you. This is a growing experience for all of us, and don't feel bad if you don't remember something or if you forget something. We're here to help you. If you're feeling overwhelmed with the format, just stop by when I'm in my office, send us an email, and we are here to help you. And again, why are we doing this? Because we want to increase our usefulness as servants for God.